There's a lot happening across the continent, across the country. What are you noticing as trends specific to Gauteng in your current role?
There are a number of challenges that we are experiencing, particularly from the law enforcement side. In this case, I'm going to speak on behalf of the inspectors. Literally, the game has changed. As you walk in to inspect the place, it no longer ends at the norms. And by saying norms, is the liquor outlet license, etc., etc. Now they need to literally check the bottles, etc. So literally, we've had to empower them in as far as that is concerned. Remember, the Gauteng Liquor Board is the regulator. Yes. We implement the act. So some of these were not necessarily even in the act, but we found ourselves having to get into that. So it is a serious challenge. Our traders also are battling. Some are actually even taken advantage of. They don't know that some of the alcohol that they are buying is actually illicit alcohol because of what my colleague has just said, that sometimes it looks so proper, you'd actually not even be able to distinguish. But the major problem that I think we are faced with also as the Gauteng Liquor Board is needing to educate the public. The public ultimately is the one that consumes the alcohol, so we need to ensure that they are aware what it is that they are consuming, which is also impacting on our act as well, because as I said, we are regulators, but now we're finding ourselves needing to stretch onto other areas in terms of addressing what the current scourges that we are facing as a country.
Sure. You know, what really scares me is you can be a tavern owner that, you know, by all means is trying to operate legally and comply. But I was just speaking to Angela, for example, and just the difference in where you're buying, whether it's a franchise or not, can actually expose you to more risk of unintentionally and unknowingly buying illicit alcohol. And the impact that it has on the body is quite dire, you know. So, Prof, what are some of the things that, you know, this illicit alcohol is actually doing to the end user? And on a micro level, what are some of the, you know, indicators of consumption of illicit alcohol and the impact that it might have on individuals?
Okay, so for starters, we were part of a team that did some analysis on some of these illicit samples. In fact, samples were just sent to us, and we analyzed it. One of our findings, which was really troubling, was that there were considerably higher levels of methanol than is normally acceptable. And we've used routine labbed analytical techniques in order to achieve this. We used a technique called GCMS, which most scientists know quite well, and FTIR, gas chromatography and mass spectrometry, and Fourier transform infrared spectroscopy. So that was a very good quantitative and very good qualitative tests which are internationally acceptable to actually determine that. So to answer your question in terms of the health risks, so the health risks of methanol poisoning, I think, are quite well known in the industry. But just to emphasize, firstly, from a physiological point of view, the whole body effects, one of the most important dire effects is metabolic acidosis. Now, metabolic acidosis upsets the normal homeostatic mechanisms in the human body, and reactions cannot occur as normal. And then from an organismic point of view, or from the various systems, depending on the amount that you actually consume, you have gastrointestinal effects such as nausea, vomiting, and so on. And it also depends on, you know, your exposure, how much you've been exposed to, and so on. It has effects, you know, that are within hours or much later, long-term effects. But the most important effect seems to be on the nervous system, particularly on the optic nerve in terms of nerve conduction. And that, for me, is really dire, because we've already seen the way it has led to blindness in some countries. So I think that, for me, is really concerning. Also, it has effects on the central nervous system. I found case studies where people have done MRIs and they've found changes in the central nervous system. And for me, the most important thing is that people need to know that consumption of methanol, whether it's adulterated or in whatever form, can lead to death. And, you know, it's really, really concerning to me.